Hi, it's Steph, and today we're going to take a walk around the garden and do a May garden tour. It is Memorial Day weekend, and I thought that it would be a good time to walk through and kind of show you what's blooming. It's difficult to time garden tours because you want everything to look beautiful, but of course things bloom at different times. So I'm going to show you what's in bloom today. And we'll start here with this beautiful Japanese maple called a fire glow. And it has a really beautiful, vibrant red color in the spring when it first leaves out. And it's just a really pretty red maple. Underneath, I have planted some cat's pajamas nepeta. Nepeta is also known as catmint. It is part of the mint family. It has a minty fragrance, which means that pests stay away from it. The deer and bunnies in my garden do not touch it, and it's beautiful. The pollinators absolutely love it, and it stays this beautiful, vibrant, almost like a clear purple color most of the season. It will die down a little bit after the first flush. I will cut it back and then it'll rebloom again, and I'll get sporadic blooming all the way from spring through fall. Back there, this huge, beautiful evergreen is a Colorado blue spruce. And when I planted it back in 2013, it was a tiny little adorable tree that I thought was dwarf. It was called Baby Blue Eyes Colorado Blue Spruce. And it currently has all of its spring growth with the new candles on the edge that are really beautiful on the tips of the branches. The candles are this really beautiful blue-gray color. This tree is stunning, and the birds love to make nests in it. The problem I have with this tree is that it was supposed to be dwarf, and you can see that it is not. It is ginormous. It is now taller than our house and planted too close to the house. So this was a rookie move that I made 13 years ago that I'm still trying to figure out how to rectify, but it does look beautiful. In this area, you can see that I have a lot of iris blooming, and this variety is gorgeous. Now I'm going to find one for you that hasn't been pummeled by the rain. This is called Concertina. It's a beautiful sort of apricot peach iris with some purple plumes in the falls. It's just really pretty. I've had this iris for several years, and as you can see, it's gotten quite large, this clump. And I've divided it once before. I have one here and one a bit further down in the bed. But I have tons of echinacea in here, coneflowers that are going to get ready to bloom, as well as some black-eyed Susan or rudbeckia that will bloom later in the season. And just last year at the end of the season, I added something to even give me late summer fall interest with some Blue Fortune agastache. So my goal with these beds is to have something that blooms continually throughout the growing season, from spring all the way through fall. So currently it is the iris and some alliums. These alliums are called gladiator alliums, and last fall I made a video planting these. I had purchased the bulbs 50% off at the end of the season in fall at the Home Depot, and they have really large bulbs, these large alliums. And they really make such an impact in the garden because they're so tall and the globe shape is so large. This globe round shape is composed of all these tiny little purple stars, and it's just stunning. Now I did have another variety of iris or another variety of allium planted in this bed called Purple Sensation, but for me the Purple Sensation kind of dwindles over the years. And you know, I don't know why they don't come back. These bigger ones seem to do better for me. So this fall, I'm going to plant a bunch more in this bed. And this shrub here is probably taking the spotlight at the moment because it is so vibrant and bright. This is the Proven Winners Color Choice shrub called Candy Corn Spirea. And it has such a beautiful array of colors throughout the whole season. It will leaf out in very late winter, early spring with red. Then it will change over to orange before going yellow and then turning chartreuse with these really pretty clusters of pink blooms. It's already starting to bud up. You can see here on the tips. The pollinators love it, and it's just a really long season interest shrub. It's also considered dwarf, so it's more compact and stays about 2 to 3 feet tall and wide. It does like sun, so I have it here in a sunny spot. Behind it, I have some salvia, and I have some penstemon, some midnight masquerade penstemon on either side, which I really love because it has this dark foliage. So you can see that this bed has gotten really packed, And the good thing about that is that it crowds out weeds, with the exception of one pesky weed that I have found that I'm going to show you, and that maybe if you have this in your garden, you can tell me what it is. I have had these blades of grass, they look like a blade of grass, it's the only way I can describe it, kind of pop up in this bed. And there's one here, and there's one there in my blue star juniper, and I'm not sure what it is. And it's been difficult for me to identify it on Google using AI because it looks like so many other ornamental grasses, but I have a little patch of it there, and it's just making me a little crazy. So if you know what it is and how I can remedy it, I would love your suggestions in the comments. Here's another really beautiful iris that just started blooming, and I'm not sure the name of this one, but look how large it is. I'll remember later and I'll pop the name up on the screen, but look how pretty this is. It's got this apricot peach color in the center, a little bit of the peach coming down the fall, and then tipped by this gorgeous deep purple. Stunning, and it's so complementary to the concertina that I have planted right beside it. That's also looking gorgeous. And a shrub that really does steal the show in spring is this here. This is the Sem false spirea. Sorbaria Sem, I believe is the official name, but this is a Monrovia shrub that I purchased several years ago. It's stunning. Now, I do have to size control it because even though it was labeled as being 4 to 5 feet tall and wide, it can quickly overtake this space. So I go through and I prune it once a season to keep it fitting in this area, and it is gorgeous. It has these ferny leaves. The new growth has shades of pink and orange and yellow. And in about a month or so, it'll start going all green. So then it'll look like a shrub with fern foliage, and it'll send up these really pretty plumes of these fuzzy white flowers that almost look like the center is a little pearl. It is really pretty. So I love it. The other thing about it is that it does send out runners. So if you have a space that you don't mind this shrub getting large and wild, it is beautiful. But for me, I've had to keep it in check, both pruning it and pulling runners, but I really still love it. Moving this way, I do have a grass that I'm going to pull out. I'll leave it here for now. It is one of my favorite grasses and I love it. It's just not the right plant for this spot. This is the Carl Forrester reed grass, and it grows more columnar. It is more compact, only getting about 3 feet in diameter and about 4 to 5 feet tall. It will send up these really pretty plumes, and that is what the blooms are on grasses, the plumes that come up that kind of look like wheat. And it's gorgeous. I have it somewhere else in the garden and I love it there. But here, it doesn't get quite enough sun and it starts to flop over my other plants. So I'm gonna pull it up and put it somewhere else. But for now, it's looking really nice and fresh. And this is a Wine and Roses Weigela that is still leafing out, but it's already getting some of its blooms. It has these trumpet-shaped pink blooms that the pollinators love. The hummingbirds, I catch them on these plants at times. So it's a really pretty shrub. And even when it's not in bloom, it offers a lot of interest in this bed with the dark foliage. Makes a nice contrast. Another evergreen that I absolutely love in my garden. This started as a tiny little tree in a 2 or 3 gallon container that was maybe this big. And look at it now. It's an absolute beauty. This is a weeping Norway spruce, and it also has its new candle growth, which is really soft and fuzzy. I actually love to touch it. So soft. And this tree is just stunning. Now moving over, I did have to clean up my pots that I had arranged here on the porch because the tulips and daffodils were done. I'm letting the daffodil foliage die back, and this afternoon I'm actually going to go shopping for some annuals to place in these containers so that I can update this arrangement. But in the pot in the front, I decided to use my Autumn Joy sedum, and it's looking really beautiful. Here I have some candy tuft that I'm going to move into the garden because it is perennial. I love to use perennials in my planters. This beauty is the Scabiosa, butterfly blue, a really pretty Scabiosa. Blooms all season long and the pollinators love it. You can see that even though it's been blooming for a while, it still has a ton of new buds always coming up. And some of the pansies that I grew from seed. The seeds I had purchased from Baker Creek, they're called Black Devil. And look at them, they're looking so great. Such a beautiful, really dark, kind of velvety color. They made a really nice companion to this white candy tuft that is now going over. So I will keep the pansies going as long as possible. Pansies generally like cooler temperatures, and as it warms up, they will stop producing blooms, but I will see what I can do to keep them going and maybe even move them to a shady spot and bring them back out in the fall if I can keep them alive throughout the summer. But the dianthus is also looking really beautiful. This is another perennial that I decided to use in my container. I have one here and one on the other side that's even in more bloom. And I tucked in some of the alyssum that I grew from seed, and you can see that it's starting to flower. So once this alyssum picks up and fills out the edges of this planter, it's going to look really pretty. And something that I am so excited about that should be blooming in the next week, maybe two, is the foxgloves. I did make a video recently called Foxglove Fever where I discussed how my foxgloves grow and what I do to keep them going and so forth. So you can check that out if you're interested. But foxgloves are biennial, which means year one, they will just work on root development and creating foliage. In year two, which is where we are now, you will get these beautiful blooms. Now back in 2022, I had an amazing show of foxgloves in this area. And here we are exactly 2 years later in 2024 with hopefully another beautiful show. Hopefully nothing happens to these, right? Nothing eats them because foxglove are toxic. I'm just hoping we don't get a crazy windstorm or rainstorm where they get knocked over. But for now, they're looking really sturdy and beautiful. And all throughout this bed, you can see that I have some of this purple sensation allium, which is looking really pretty. But I do find in my garden that they peter out, meaning that each year they get smaller and I get less of them. So you can see this batch here is really short. This is generally the size of the bloom, but they just got a bit shorter and I have less than I had in the last couple of years. But they are a great companion plant to iris. I actually have another group of iris here. Now this one is called Cantina, and it is a beautiful reblooming iris. Now iris, the Japanese iris, you have some that are just, they bloom one time and they're done for the season, and you have rebloomers. If you can find rebloomers, they're the perfect ones to add to the garden because they will bloom now, and then about 6 to 8 weeks later, they will send out another set of blooms. But this will bloom probably in the next couple of weeks, maybe even a week or so, because we're getting some warm temperatures. So that'll help them open up faster. My roses generally bloom in June, and since we're heading into the last week of May, that should also happen in the next 2 weeks. And it might line up again with the foxgloves and the rest of the iris, and that will be beautiful. So I will be sure to share that with you. I have another candy corn spirea here in front of this Boulevard Cypress evergreen that has started to get a little bit too large for this space as well. So it is possible that I might want to move this out of here. I can try to move it and see how that goes, but not now. If anything, when it cools off in fall. Some more Nepeta. I actually have Nepeta coming all the way down this walkway. And you will notice that in the front here of this bed where I haven't yet mulched, this is usually where I plant my gomphrena, which I'm currently growing from seed. But these are all foxglove seedlings. So once you have foxgloves in your beds, it's possible that you never have to try growing them from seed again because they self-seed readily. So I will have to prick out a bunch of these to plant my gomphrena, and I will just grow them on in the back of the bed somewhere so that I can move them into position where I want them next spring. This Japanese maple is a Tamakiyama, and over the years we have pruned it back quite a bit to keep it fitting in this space. But these beds now are about 13 years old, and so everything is getting pretty full and pretty grown. So the good thing about that, like I said earlier, is that it will crowd out a lot of weeds. The bad thing about that is that it starts crashing into other things. So currently it still fits, but at some point I may have to move out some knockout roses, which will be a bummer because I absolutely love them in this main front walkway. I have another group of iris here, and the variety on this one might be blue whale. And it's also another really beautiful dark colored purple with a lighter purple that almost matches the Nepeta. And that is getting ready to open up. This is going to be a fantastic year for iris. They are really like full this year. A lot of bloom stalks. I've had these irises here probably for about 6 years now. And I can't wait until they're all open. It's going to look fabulous. And my gold mop cypress, which is one of my favorite gold evergreens in my garden because it's so easy. This one had gotten too large for this space, so I actually had limbed it up and turned it into a little topiary tree. And I think it turned out really unique and I really love it. I get asked about this often in garden tours and in videos, and it's just a regular gold mop cypress. Gold mop fall cypress is what you'll find them called at the nursery. And behind it, I have a beautiful Hinoki cypress. I also love Hinokis. I have quite a few of them in my garden, and this one is a Gracilis. It's one of the Obtusa Gracilis, I believe it's called. One of the traditional Hinokis. It is a pretty large one. It's been here for, like I said, about 13 years, most of these plants at this point, and they're just looking beautiful. I love this one. Okay, this bed here. Also filling up beautifully, and something I'm going to kind of walk through and show you, but I'll show you the plant that I'm most excited about. In the corner, I have a peony. It's called Shirley Temple. It has the most buds it's ever had this year, so that should look fabulous. And right behind it is some lupin. Now this lupin is one that I started from bare root. If you've been around the channel for a little while, you might recall that I had gone to Tractor Supply last year, and I had purchased some bare root lupins. There was 5 in the container, and I was able to keep 4 of them alive, and they are all blooming this year. And while it was a multi-pack with different colors, it seems that the ones that are going to bloom are all purple, which I think is a very dominant color when it comes to lupin. And this shrub here is the My Monet Purple Effect Weigela. It is a proven winner shrub, and this shrub is gorgeous. This Weigela has variegated foliage and these really pretty trumpet-shaped blooms in spring. They bloom from the bottom up, and the foliage will get a lot larger once the plant is done blooming. And that is the case with many perennials and shrubs. The foliage will start off small, the plant will bloom, it's putting all of its energy towards the blooms, and then once it is done blooming, the foliage gets larger. And in the center of this bed, my centerpiece evergreen is this really pretty weeping blue spruce. It also has all of its new spring growth, which is soft and fuzzy, and this really light kind of blue-gray coloring. I love the weeping habit of it. I think it makes a really pretty statement in this bed. This is the variegated iris called Pallida alba, and it has a really pretty light green and cream variegation, and the blooms are a light lavender purple. So these should be blooming at some point in the next couple of weeks. And this Japanese maple, I absolutely love the way that it's growing. We planted it here because we didn't think that this thing was alive. All of a sudden it started to shoot out new growth. We thought, well, let's just throw it in this bed and see what happens. And it is a beauty, and I love the way that it kind of cascades over this retaining wall. It's just a lace leaf red maple, and it's stunning. And the other thing in this bed that's getting ready to bloom is a 9-bark. This here is the Proven Winners Tiny Wine 9-bark. It is a more compact variety of 9-bark. It is loaded with buds and will be blooming any day now. They almost look like little raspberry buds. Really pretty, and it has dark foliage. Even in the winter, it has winter interest with appealing bark. So a 9-bark is a great shrub, and nothing touches it in my garden. The deer, bunnies, so really good shrub, and they're very hardy. And I'm going to show you some changes that I made in this driveway bed over behind George. This driveway bed is one that we made a couple of years ago, and it's undergoing a little bit of change right now. I had some Acorus sweet flag that was planted right here in the front. I had 2 clumps of it, and recently I divided it into a bunch more. So what I did was I lined all underneath the Bloodgood Japanese maples with some clumps of this Acorus sweet flag. And I think that's going to make a really pretty sort of bright plant underneath the shade of the Bloodgood. I also have some of the Carl Forester grasses here, and they look really small compared to the ones in my walkway because I only cut them back about a week ago. I hadn't done it before the winter and they looked just really messy, so I did that recently. In the center here, I have two really pretty blue foliage shrubs that almost look like eucalyptus or sage, and these are actually called Iceberg Alley Sage Leaf Willows. They just had all of their catkins that were blooming, and now it has this really pretty blue-gray foliage. I have two of them here, and recently I picked up a Eastern Hemlock Duke. I can't remember the name right now, but I'll put it up on the screen. But it is a new hemlock. I had a golden hemlock, the Duchess, in the back garden, and I just picked up the Duke of the same variety to place here. Now this one will grow more pyramidal. It has a pretty compact growth habit, staying at about 3 feet wide, but getting about 10 feet tall. So I will see if it likes this spot. If not, I might have to move it, but I do like the way that it looks here to add a pop of yellow with the blue shrubs and the red trees. I think it looks really pretty. And in the front here, I planted this recently, which I had also picked up. This is a Globosa Nana evergreen. It's a really pretty rounded shape evergreen that also stays pretty compact at about 3 to 4 feet tall and wide. It grows in a round shape, and it gets this really pretty kind of yellow-green color in the summer. And then it goes a little bit more bronze for the winter months. And that is it in this bed. I have a repeat on this side with the 3 Carl Forester grasses, and I also did, I trimmed out the bottom of this Bloodgood Japanese maple with some more of the Acorus sweet flag. Our Heritage River Birch that we planted not last spring, but the one before, is also all leafed out and looking beautiful. And heading here to our patio bed, I'm going to show you a couple of things. Now this area stays pretty wet, and we've been getting a lot of rain, so even as I'm walking through it, I can feel the moisture in the grass. But for that reason, it washes away a lot of our mulch, and we get a lot of weeds in this spot, so I do have some cleanup to do in this area. But there is another My Monet Purple Effect Weigela planted in this corner. Makes a really pretty contrast with the Japanese maple. Again, this one is in bloom, and it has the variegated foliage. This is another lace leaf Japanese maple, and this one is called Garnet, and it's looking beautiful. Now the wingspan is also getting pretty large, so every year George will come in here and prune off a few branches for me. He's a little bit more delicate with the pruning, does a better job than I do. I kind of get aggressive with it and I can misshape the tree, so I leave that to him. But it is blocking some of my alliums that I have that are trying to grow through here, so we'll have to either move the alliums or prune the tree, or a combination of both. Now this bed really shines for me is in the summer, but there's a couple of things that do look nice in the spring. So the alliums, which are currently starting to bloom, this one is already blooming. And right underneath the allium, which is nice because it's covering all of the foliage for the allium that starts to yellow, I have another white iris that will bloom in the next couple of weeks. And something I was really surprised to see come back. This is Golden Jubilee Hyssop. I started this from seed last year using the winter sowing method, and it came back for year 2, which I'm pretty surprised about because hyssop typically likes drier soil. And like I said, this is a pretty moist bed. And I was happy to see that. It has a really pretty golden color. And the thing that is blooming and looking beautiful in this bed at the moment is my geum. This is a variety called Mai Tai. This has been blooming for almost 2 weeks now. They bloom for a really long time. They have these really delicate and beautiful kind of rosette shaped blooms. You can see here. And the tree is loaded, or the plant rather, is loaded with these blooms. There's still some buds that are opening up. So this blooms for a while. They have these really pretty blooms. The pollinators love them. And even when it's not in bloom, it has this nice tidy clump of foliage. So really great plant for a spring garden. Another Japanese maple in this corner, and this one is supposed to be more tolerant of sun. It's a yellow variety called Summer Gold, and it's also doing really well and putting on some height. Another beautiful blue spruce evergreen. This one is in a standard form, or what they call a lollipop. And it's also putting on a good amount of size and has all of its new soft spring growth in this really pretty blue-gray color. And now we'll move on to the shed beds. And in this bed here, while there is a lot of green, I'm just going to show you what's currently blooming. I started some Aquilegia or columbine from seed about 2 years ago, and it is now looking beautiful. This variety is called Nora Barlow, and it's a really pretty pink with some lime green edges. It's a ruffly variety, and it looks really pretty. It's very dainty but tall, so it makes a nice impact when you walk up to the bed, having it kind of float above the other plants. This is a peony that I moved here, my Sarah Bernhardt, and this year, because I just moved it, I don't expect it to be as large as it has been in prior years, but it has quite a few blooms or buds, so I'm excited about that. And I have another Aquilegia or columbine here, and this is a purple variety. It's actually called Black Barlow, I believe, but it's also another really pretty one, and it combines nicely with the pink columbine. And my window boxes are going to get an update this weekend as well. They looked really beautiful this spring with some daffodils and tulips. And my hedge of little lime hydrangeas are all leafed out, and they will start to bud up soon. I have some irises planted back here, but I want to show you my Ascot rainbow euphorbia that is looking really pretty right here in this bed. I planted this just last season, and I planted it for the foliage because it's got a really pretty variegated foliage, and it almost gets like pink tips, but it is blooming at the moment, and even the dainty blooms are so interesting. This plant looks so pretty, and I'm really loving it. Now, I only purchased one because it was only marginally hardy in my USDA growing zone, but now that I see that it survived and stood pretty evergreen all season, I think it would be safe for me to add a couple more. It's just a really pretty plant. And in this area, I showed a lot of these plantings recently when we did our Japanese maple garden tour for the spring, and a lot of the colors have already changed again, so I'll just do a quick walk through this area. But under here, I have some of the silver gumdrops heuchera. That is a guacamole hosta. There are some pulmonaria or lungwort, and some more heuchera planted. This one here is the carnival variety, carnival peach parfait. This is another weeping blue spruce. And the maples, the colors change so fast this time of year. The autumn moon has more kind of like of a pink hue to it, or a little bit of orange. It's looking really gorgeous. The Haconocloa has fully leafed out now and looking really pretty. And right here is my favorite heuchera. It is called the caramel heuchera. It has a really beautiful variation of shades of yellow and orange and red, almost like a peach coloring. It's just really pretty, and has been the coral bell or heuchera that has done the best for me in my garden. I had one plant. I divided it in 3. I was able to get 2 larger portions, and here I have a little bit smaller one. But one plant, I got 3 out of it, and they're doing beautifully. This is called Black Pearl. And I think the colors complement each other really nicely. And my favorite fern in my garden, this one here is called Godzilla. George also loves this one. Has such a beautiful color, really large leaves, and it should fill up this space because it gets about 30 inches in diameter. Pull a weed while I'm down here. My little honey oak leaf hydrangea is still getting a little bit too much sun. It has a really pretty gold foliage, but you can see that it gets a little sun scorched. So I'm hoping over time, as this Ariadne Japanese maple kind of shades it, that it'll do a little bit better. But it only stays about 3 to 4 feet in diameter. So I think that'll be really nice to fill out this space. I have some hosta planted underneath. You can see that the Ariadne has already changed color. It was more of a burnt orange color when we did the tour a little over a week ago, and now it is starting to go into its summer color, which is actually underneath. You can kind of see what it looks like. It's more of a green coloring, but you can still see the reticulation on the foliage. And here is the Chinese fringe flower. Someone had asked me recently about an update on it and whether or not it made it through the winter. Now this shrub is hardy to a zone 7 and I am currently a zone 6B, 7A, but I did put a winter shrub cover on it and it survived. You can see that it's pushing out a bunch of new growth. It looks like it did already start to bloom. Maybe I missed it or maybe it's still going to bloom, but it made it and it's looking good. And back here behind the Japanese maple garden, I have a dogwood that's blooming. Now this dogwood is beautiful because it has variegated foliage. I believe it's called Summer Shadows. It was untagged when I bought it, but the characteristic of it that makes me believe it's either celestial shadows or summer shadows is the variegated foliage. So it has a yellow and green foliage and really pretty white blooms. So here's the bloom and the foliage. You can see these blooms are a lot larger than some other dogwoods I've seen. It's just a really pretty tree. I absolutely love it. And right underneath it, I know I recently did a video on my ground covers, and this was a little bit smaller at the time, but look how gorgeous this lamium is. Lamium, also known as dead nettle. This variety is called Purple Dragon. It has this really large silvery leaf, and it will sporadically send up these little purple blooms. But it's filling in this space really nicely. I also had some Jacob's Ladder there that I showed in a video recently that is now done blooming, but they were really beautiful this year with their light purple flowers and this ferny foliage that has tints of dark coloring, just really pretty. Speaking of dogwoods, I have this other really beautiful white one that is past its prime now. I showed it recently in a video and the blooms looked beautiful. They were really large and white. I had gotten this for Mother's Day about 2 years ago, and this year it was loaded with blooms. Last year we had gotten a late season frost and I didn't get any blooms. So I was really excited about that. And my geranium macrorrhizum is just now done blooming. There are still some blooms on it, but a few days ago it was loaded. The pollinators absolutely love this. It makes a wonderful ground cover. You can see I have it planted here under trees, which is a really difficult spot to plant because there's a lot of root competition, and it does beautifully. So if you have a tough spot in the garden that you need a ground cover to take over a lot of space, that's a good one. And it's not aggressive. It spreads slowly. It's easy to pull out. So really good one. And my lilac. This is a Korean lilac. It smells absolutely wonderful over here right now with the breeze bringing the smell around. It's so pretty. And it is just starting to open up now. This has been planted here for a few years. And while this spot is relatively shady, it does get just enough sun to keep it happy and producing some blooms. Right behind it is a rhododendron that is also starting to bloom, and this combination together looks so beautiful. The light purple blooms of the lilac with this pink rhododendron, I just love it. So in about a week, this will be all opened along with the lilac, and it'll look so pretty. And one more thing that I want to show you in this area. I've been working on planting some things up, and I actually showed you in a video recently that I added some epimediums and some Japanese painted fern to this bed. I moved a bleeding heart, but something that I did recently was I took the ivory halo dogwoods that I had planted in the driveway bed and I moved them right here because I decided that I wanted to make a sitting spot here in this spot. This is shaded, and it gives us a really nice view to our Japanese maple garden right through these trees. And I have this tiny bench here that used to be in my mom and dad's garden that may not stay here, but for now it is because we wanted to test out a seating area. So I placed it here and I planted my 3 ivory halo dogwoods in this spot that's kind of headed into the woods. So what I think is that these like a little bit more sun than they're probably going to get here, but that should just keep them growing a little bit slower, which might not be a bad thing. But I think that because they're variegated in this creamy white and green, it'll be a really nice bright spot in this shady area and will make a nice backing for a garden bench. This is is a newer bed that we just made last fall, and we planted some Japanese maples in here as well as a few really small or dwarf conifers and evergreens. And the one that I was most excited to add to this bed was this one here. This is called a spruce poosh, and I'll show you the tag here. It's a Pisces Abies poosh. And what's really cool about this one is that it gets these really cute little red pine cones in the spring. They were a lot brighter just a few days ago, and now they're starting to kind of dull out a little bit, but really fun. I planted my white bleeding heart here. I thought this would make a nice spot to have this perennial, since I hadn't added any perennials to this bed yet. And this Japanese maple is really stealing the show in our garden at the moment. It is called Orium, and it is a chartreuse yellow Japanese maple. It's what they call the full moon maples because of the shape of the leaf. It is stunning. This is the first year with having this in our garden, and we're loving it. If you're interested in learning about any of the plants that I've planted in this space, I did just post a video just about a week ago or so called my Japanese Maple Garden Tour. You can check that out. I will put the link in the description of this video as well as in the pinned comment. And if you like this type of content and you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, I would love it if you could subscribe. It's free to do so. And if you liked this video, if you could hit the like button. I will be posting garden tours pretty regularly at this point because things change so fast. In fact, I might have another one in a week or two because I noticed a bunch of things that are getting ready to bloom. So thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I will catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please hit the thumbs up button, and please consider subscribing so you don't miss any of my future videos. And we'll see you soon.